Fatherhood isn't easy, but in Autismland, it's a journey like no other. Join Mark de Grasse as we explore the highs, lows, and everything in between of raising children on the autism spectrum. With real stories, practical advice, and a touch of humor, we're here to navigate this unique journey together. For dads navigating life on the autism spectrum, you're not alone.
I'm Mark de Grasse, a proud dad navigating this incredible journey, and I'm here to share real stories, practical advice, and a community of support. So let's go ahead and dive in. Like I said, I am a father of autism. My son Damien, who is now 12, is severely autistic. He is nonverbal and doesn't have much communication at all. And so you can imagine some of the challenges that we had, but also the joys that we've been able to, have from raising him and my other son, Declan, who is neurotypical, but special in his own regards. He's very gifted and is very different from his brother, who's just 10 months older than him. So we've been through a pretty big adventure, which I'm going to kind of summarize here today. I just want to give the dads out there that are listening some insight into my life raising an autistic son, and just let you know that you're not alone. And your journey is maybe similar to mine, but definitely very unique. And that's one of the differences between, say, a standard, dad, and we're all special. Dads are fighting an uphill battle when it comes to a lot of the things in society right now, a lot of the changes that are happening with technology and the economy and other societal pressures that we have to deal with. And autism, is difficult in any circumstance, and I think it's especially difficult right now as we go through this big transition that has the world in a lot of chaos and a lot of fires that are going on, literally and figuratively. So right now, I'm going to basically walk you through my experience as an autistic father, and hopefully you can help identify some of the things that are similar, but also think of the things that are different. And just to summarize, for autism in general is if you know an autistic person, then you know one autistic person. You don't know everybody's experience in autism, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as fathers in autism is it's a very lonely journey a lot of times because our kids are definitely different. For example, my son is what you call hyposensitive, whereas most autistic kids are hypersensitive. So hyposensitive means that he actually craves input. He craves pressure, he craves sound and light and all the different senses, smell. He craves having extreme versions of all those things. And so for us, one of the things we've always had to deal with, one of the more difficult things, is travel on airplanes. Now, my son, even though he is hyposensitive and craves the loudness of his favorite movies, which would be Monsters Inc. I'm sure a lot of you out there have had to watch lots of Pixar, but his tendency is to not just watch a movie. He actually finds individual scenes within the movie, maybe like a 5 to 10 second clip, and he'll just repeat that over and over and over again, for hours on end, if he's given the opportunity to. But he also won't wear headphones. And so when we travel on airplanes, we're having to, basically tell everybody around us the situation and hope that they're not going to get too upset about it. Now, it's gotten actually a lot better. And we're actually in Texas. And one of the reasons we're in Texas is because the people here and the community that you find are very accepting of special needs. And that's made a huge difference in our lives. But on airplanes specifically, you can imagine if you had to hear, Monsters Inc. is his most popular one. And the scene that he listens to constantly is Mr. Waternoose yelling at his employees and then setting off this can of Scream, which then makes children screaming noises. And so it's very auditory, extreme thing that you have to hear, and he'll just repeat it over and over again. So what we do, and this is the kind of advice that I like to, that I'm trying to build with this podcast, is we actually talk to everybody who sits next to us on the airplane. Well, number one, we inform the airline and the staff of the airplane that, hey, I'm Mark. This is Damien. He's severely autistic. I would love if he could wear headphones, but he can't, or he won't. He will just pull them out. And we've tried a million times, but it doesn't work. So we could sit wherever you want on the airplane if you want to move us. But he will be, having this, iPhone against his head playing, audible for everybody around us to hear. And I hope we won't be too disruptive, but that's the situation. And then we actually make that same introduction to each one of the people that are sitting next to us. That way they know. I say, hey, I'm Mark. This is Damien. Damien is severely autistic. He will be listening to this one scene in Monsters, Inc. for the entire plane ride. And the majority of the time, everybody's fine. But the fact of the matter is that either way, I would be okay. If they said, you know what, that's too much for me, I'm going to move, I would not be offended by that. And I think that's one of the big values that you get from having an autistic child, is that you're willing to accept other people's reactions too, much more than I would have, because that's something you could be easily offended by. I mean, it's kind of sad that somebody would say, I don't want to sit next to that. But honestly, if I think back to me in my 20s traveling a bunch, I didn't like sitting next to kids, even if I had headphones on, any kind of, noise or kicking or movement, I'd be like, oh, that's so disruptive. And now you think back and you're like, what a jerk, and that's one of the beautiful things about having an autistic child is you get to see the other side, and you get to identify with it, and it's incredible. And so now as much as I may have been offended in the past, these days I just accept it. Like, oh yeah, I get it. Back in the day, I wouldn't have been happy about being next to a kid playing Monsters Inc. Or there was another instance where we got stuck on the tarmac in Tucson. No, it was Phoenix, Arizona, and there was a monsoon going on, so the plane could not take off. And at that time, he was listening to the Minion. No, it wasn't the Minion. It was the Minions singing, but it was in Despicable Me at the very end when they sing this song. And I think it's Boys to Men, and except it's Minions singing Boys to Men, and it was just on repeat, and I just repeat it over and over. It was like an hour and a half of that. And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh man, somebody's going to be very upset with me. I'm going to get some words, but most people were fine. And again, I think this is, saying the expectation, where, don't just expect everybody to be okay with it. And also don't expect everybody to not be okay with it. And you're ready to fight. I think the best thing you could do in these situations is simply inform people, educate people. And a lot of times people are very willing to accept that. And then if they aren't, but they said they were, most of the time you already won. Like I said he was going to do this, so he's doing it, and he said it was okay, so you should still be okay with it. We really haven't had too many problems. Now, yeah, I do think in dads with autism do have an advantage over sometimes moms of autism, because I know other women might be harsher to my wife than they especially would be with me, where they would expect her to control your child, or back when he was younger and he wasn't so obviously autistic, he was just a young child, and we've known he was autistic since he was 18 months. I think that's when I accepted the autism, and I'm not going to go into super detail about all these things, because this is definitely, they're individual subjects that we'll cover on the podcast. But it's, as he got older, my wife had to deal with a little bit more discrimination, I would say, in terms of her ability to control her child, and people not willing to accept that, he was autistic, and that was the reason why we weren't always able to. But dads have a slight advantage because, one, I think people have a really low expectation of dads. And I think this could be the media. I always look back at like Disney shows and like, oh, look, dad's an idiot. Oh, dad's so stupid. Oh, dad blew it again. And a lot of times, especially with children's shows for some reason, we've been portrayed as just morons. And that's offensive enough. However, the side benefit is that's the expectation that we're incompetent, we're incapable, we're just kind of dumb. And so people kind of use their, special needs clubs with us as much as they do with our kids. But they're more tolerant, which is really nice. But again, there are some things that you can do to encourage that. I try to be smiley, which helps. I try to be very polite. And I'm sort of like that now anyways. Wasn't always. I used to have, resting angry face or whatever you want to call that. Not because I was angry, but just because I was insecure and shy, which sounds crazy now because I don't seem like that. But I've gone through a lot of self-development myself. And I think that's another bonus of autism is the forced self-development. Because if you're not willing to change with the situation that you may never have expected, and you definitely may never have prepared for, then you could lose yourself. You could become somebody that you don't like, and it's really sad to see sometimes because people break. It's a difficult situation, and sometimes people can't even blame you. My wife and I always talk about how the divorce rate for special needs families is 80%. And that's higher than almost any other segment of how you could break down divorce rates. So we know how difficult it is, and we see it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to start this show, because if you don't hear that and you're just like, hey, well, life will be easier if we just had our autistic child for 50% of the time, or, depending on your morals and ethics, 0% of the time if you run out on the family, which also happens. But the fact of the matter is that if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably not you. You're somebody who's sticking around. And my goal is really to just make you feel less lonely with that, because even though we've dealt with this situation, and I've grown personally from it, not everybody can, or not everybody's willing to or ready to. So I'm really thankful to God that I have had that realization, and I personally been able to grow in a way it's allowed me to deal with all the things that come with autism, which is, you need extra mega patience. I always used to think I was patient until you have kids, and then you realize like, oh no, you have a ways to go. And I've become so much more patient and so much more understanding and so much more empathetic, and so much more able to express my emotions than I was ever before. And it's almost because I had to. It's not like you get some choice in this matter. The choice with autism, or especially with severe autism, is, yeah, you could buckle down, grow yourself, figure things out, spend years or decades figuring things out to help you along with the situation, or you could put them in a home, or you could do something way worse, which I don't even want to discuss. But I think, again, if you're here, that's not you. In those cases, you are raising your son or daughter with autism, and you should be super proud of that, because it's so hard. you know I'm trying not to get super emotional about it, but it is. I mean, you just gotta address it, and you did it. There's just so many people that you need to help you in this situation. My saintly wife who has figured, but the majority of it out. I act like I've done all this work, and I have, but compared to what she's done in terms of the research and the studies and the appointments and the tests, in terms of our autism journey, it wasn't just like he's autistic, and I don't think most of us have that, because there's no test there's no blood test you can take. Oh, it's autism. What we had to do is essentially eliminate every other factor to get diagnosed with autism and then maybe potentially get some kind of benefit from that, or if nothing else, be able to use our health insurance to help us pay for the support. But we basically had to eliminate everything else. So, he had to get surgery when he was a child since he can't talk to figure out if he can hear or not. He got tested for Fragile X, got tested for, ADD and a million other things. He can't talk. So most of the time when you're doing these studies, it's like, how does he feel about this? It's like, I don't know. He does have a form of language. He has about 20 to 30 signs. We're very thankful because we're at Central Texas Autism Center, and that's been enormous in helping us, helping him operate. And it's ABA therapy, and we'll get into the different types of therapy. I'm not going to go into too much. You can see I'm already struggling to finish this one episode, but I do want to give you an introduction to what this show is about. The show is about talking about the real aspects of autism, not the fun stuff of like, oh, he's Rain Man and he could do math, in his head, and it's incredible, and he could, look at a city from the air and be able to draw the city from memory. And there are autistic kids that are like that. There's a show called The Good Doctor, and it's about a autistic doctor surgeon. Again, it's a spectrum. There's different levels of it. But at the end of the day, there are some levels that are just very difficult. There aren't a lot of obvious benefits to it. And some of them never talk. Not that this podcast is only limited to the extremely severe cases, but I do want, especially those cases, to understand that you're not alone. It's a situation that there are other people dealing with, and we're some of them, or I'm some of them. But especially with the dad side, because again, the dad side, middle-aged men in general, or just men in general, are very lonely gender. We don't. It's hard for us to connect, and there's so many expectations of us to provide and to be strong and to do all these different things that we've been kind of saddled with. Even the emotions, me showing emotions. Some guys will look at this and how I've reacted during this podcast and be like, "Oh, gross! Like, be a man." And that's I'm not gonna get into the toxic and stuff like that because I think that gets overblown too. But we're just people. People have emotions, and suppressing those emotions is actually the worst thing you could do. So I do want to put on display what it's like to show your emotions, and sometimes it's not pretty. We're hoping to be a place where you could see that happen, and I'm hoping to be as honest with you as possible. I've gone through a transformation over the last couple of years, which I'll mention on the podcast, that has allowed me to finally address these things and stop, suppressing these emotions that just have to happen. There's no bad emotions. There's just emotions. And and this is something a therapist told me one time. You can't pick and choose the emotions to suppress. When you choose to suppress an emotion, you're choosing to suppress all emotions. And what you become is this shell version of yourself that can't actually feel or experience anything for real. And it's a miserable situation, which I don't recommend because I've been through that. But that's it. So what we'll be doing on the show is bringing in other autism dads, and there'll be a variety of dads and a variety of dads that are dealing with different levels of autism. But what we're trying to do is really just expose what it's like, and that's why we kind of came up with the name, Dads in Autism Land, because it's an adventure, an unexpected one. And if you're into, fantasy and sci-fi, you kind of get the idea of what it's like going through, an alien world that you've never experienced before and you are totally unprepared for. That's what Autismland is, and it's fine. And it's a great adventure. You could learn a ton, and you get to experience it with the people you love, ideally. And I hope you have that as well, like I do. But tune in. It's going to be a ton of fun. This is a passion project for me and my wife, and for me especially. I do a lot of podcasts, and I'll link to some of those. But my purpose on this is really just to connect with other autism dads, let you know you're not alone, and hopefully give you some tips and advice that could help you along the way, and to guide you through this adventure that is fatherhood with autism. Thank you for tuning in. I'm very excited about this brand. I'm very excited about this podcast, and I hope we help people. That's actually my greatest joy in life at this point is just helping people in any way I can. And if this helps you, then please share it. Share it with other dads or other families. Yeah, and then we're not excluding the moms here because the moms have quite a bit, but honestly, there's more podcasts for them than there are for us at this point. So I'm hoping to give you guys a new resource and a new, hopefully, connection in order to grow in your ability to father autism. So tune in next time.